Hello, historians. Welcome to the first episode of Hidden Histories, Lesson 1. Today we are going to be talking about army ranks. This will be the first part because this will be a 3-part series that will come sporadically and we'll learn more about the army as they go on. As you can tell by reading the chapters, Kalos in this time period is besotted with war and battles, and being a knight, being a hero, being an army was so, so loved, so sought after, so people wanted that role. They were like modern day celebrities. That army ranks was very important, even to commoners. It was very important. They knew how to respect you via your rank. They knew how important you were and how strong you were via your rank, right? And whereas nowadays a lot of people may not have that much understanding, or maybe you could even say that much care about ranks, in that time it was all over the local papers and all over the verbal news. So this is important, and as we continue to go through the story of Kalos, we may start to understand the importance of the ranks. Before we get started into each rank, what I wanted to talk about was army Pokemon, right? So Pokemon that are in the army and that are trained specifically for war. These Pokemon are not toys or not pets in that kind of way. They are breeded and they are created and they are trained to fight and to kill, right? So when you see battles and people taking part in wars, the Pokemon aren't held back the way they are when it comes to Pokemon battles that we see with trainers in modern day. They hold back in order to just cause damage, but in war they're actually trained and utilized to kill. So they're using full level ability, full skill, and strength, because if you don't, you're dead. If you decide that you're going to go easy on your opponent, then in battle that can cost you your life. So that's one thing I wanted to stress, that these Pokemon were bred to kill. The Kalos army also provided what we could call rental Pokemon that they would provide to the soldiers, right? Depending on the soldier's rank would depend on what kind of Pokemon you could rent. You had to be of a certain level for the Pokemon to actually understand you and take you seriously. And obviously the higher you rank you go, the more powerful Pokemon you can get, obviously. However, Knights did not get access to that service. So once you got to the rank of Knight, you would have to utilize your own Pokemon, right? Because the levels would be that much higher. The skill level is that much higher. Right, so let's talk about the lowest rank, and that would be the rank of Foot Soldier. The rank of Foot Soldier, what can I say about it? It is the lowest rank, and it's the least respected rank. The reason why that you can get into becoming a Foot Soldier with honestly 0 qualifications whatsoever. There's no strength requirement, there's no speed requirement, there's no health requirement, there's no age requirement. If if you want to come in and test your skills as a soldier, then you can absolutely do that as a Foot Soldier. But because of the low requirements, it's very little respect. You will be trained by a lieutenant on basic skills. These will be skills such as physical skills, making sure that your speed is up to par, your strength is up to par, your knowledge of your duties, the knowledge of how to hold a weapon and a shield. Also, and that could be any weapon from swords to bow and arrows to maces, spears, whatever your regiment require of you. But it wouldn't have anything, unfortunately, to do with the training of Pokemon. Because the majority of foot soldiers were coming in with low IQ battle skills, very low. Even though they were given Pokemon, their Pokemon tended to stay incredibly weak. And a lot of their Pokemon tend to die in battle. Even if the soldier doesn't, they tend to have a high turnover of low-level Pokemon handed to them. They were also very low capability with weapons. But due to the sheer number, because there were more foot soldiers than any other rank in the army, they were still useful on the battlefield as and when, and usually get a low amount of kills, but they do wear out the enemy just from their sheer numbers. But to be fair, it's not all doom and gloom. They do have their uses. Because a lot of the foot soldiers were low class or peasants themselves, they tended to have skills as well, such as laborers, lumberjacks, carpentry. Also had chefs and medical people as well, who had low-level medical skills. So they were always useful in terms of creating the atmosphere for the camp. This would be their what they would do, basically. They'd make sure the camp was created, taken care of, and make sure that the grass where people stayed low. Any sort of manual labor that needed to be done in a platoon would be done by the foot soldiers. And they would always make sure they had skilled, foot soldiers there. So even if they weren't battle skilled, they would have a use. Unfortunately, despite that use, even by other soldiers, they were still always, unfortunately, they were looked down upon. The foot soldiers, they're at the bottom, literally at the bottom, and nobody really treated them with respect. So, as a foot soldier, you were provided with a level 5 rental Pokemon. You come into the army with 0 skills. They need to see that you have the capability to get your Pokemon from level 5 to level 10 to be considered for being a foot soldier. Yeah. To be considered to get into the next rank, right? Once you've got a Pokemon to level 10, then it will showcase that you were serious and you had some actual skills with Pokemon, because Pokemon skills were the most sought after skills in the army. Every single soldier needed to be able to utilize a Pokemon in order to fight. It was a Pokemon versus Pokemon type war. So with that one, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. So your skill with Pokemon was very sought after. But because you go into the army with no skills whatsoever, they wouldn't give you any Pokemon of real capability. And you're only allowed one. If you're low rank, you get one Pokemon, and it's your duty to protect, look after this Pokemon, and train them to be better. So the first official recognized rank is known as a second lieutenant, right? You could normally recognize them because they'll have 1 star on the top of their shoulder, which showcases, their rank, right? 1 star on their left shoulder to showcase their rank. It was the second lieutenant is a member of the army who has shown that they have basic Pokemon battle skills. There were 2 ways really to become a second lieutenant. You could either, as was previously mentioned, get your Pokemon up to level 10 and then you would become a second lieutenant immediately. Or you could, if you wasn't in the army whatsoever, you could pay to take a test and showcase your skills with the sword, and a fitness test, and a capability test, and a Pokemon battle with an army official, and they will decide whether you have the skills to be a second lieutenant or not. If so, you're immediately there as a 1-star rank. Unfortunately, 95% of peasants did not really make it to being a second lieutenant. The army was always seen as a dead-end job to peasants. You get a decent wage, but your life was consistently at risk, and the chance of making more money by going up the rank was incredibly low. Their capability and understanding of Pokemon and how to utilize Pokemon was so small that there was nothing. That, the chances of them going up the rank was low. So the task of a second lieutenant was always stricter than a foot soldier, because they were immediately put into training to become lieutenants, right? So they don't get, so if a lot of foot soldiers are left to their own devices, they're happy for you to stay a foot soldier. But if you want more for yourself, and if you want more skills, then what you can do is, become a second lieutenant, and immediately you're on the road to getting higher in the ranks. They always wanted a stronger army. So second lieutenant showcased to the army that you were ready for a higher form of training, right? And they usually have this battle skills of a first gym leader. So the first gym leader would normally be someone around the levels of 10 to 15, and they would normally be of that strength in terms of Pokemon combat. Now, as you are a higher rank, the level of rental Pokemon provided by the army had also gone up. So usually you were provided with a Pokemon that is level 10. And then as previously, you've got to get up the ranks as always in order to showcase your skill and make it to the next rank. Yep. Also, another interesting fact, that they could also have 2 Pokemon now on their person, which was common for most soldiers. They get comfortable with the 2, always have a backup, and you have your main. And you also had the option of whether to take new Pokemon or to keep the ones that you had previously trained up to level 10 anyway. And in the 3rd rank, we have Lieutenant, who were recognized by having 2 stars on their left shoulder, right? The responsibilities of a lieutenant now were for supervising the second lieutenants and the foot soldiers, right? It was the lieutenant's job to train the lieutenants in the ways they should go and in what to expect, right? So the foot soldiers would get the basic training by the lieutenants, and the second lieutenant, would always get the higher level of training by the lieutenants, basically teaching them how to do their job, right? They will also train the lieutenants in the rules and regulations for the department that they're in, which obviously depending on the department, depends on what they need you to do. So of course, that would always differ from post to post. He will also supervise the conformance of plans and procedures issued by the captains of the departments. Now, lieutenants were in direct command of the captain. Now, to become a lieutenant, you would have had to have gotten your rental Pokemon from level 10 all the way to level 20, which wasn't always an easy task, because if anything happened to your rental Pokemon, no matter how high you got it, even if you got it to level 19, if they passed away and you needed more rental Pokemon, they would have been level 10, and you would have had to start that process all over again. So it was one of the hardest ranks to attain, to jump from the first rank of a level 10 all the way to a level 20. It was pretty difficult. But to be a lieutenant, you had to showcase that you had a higher knowledge of basic battling and basic Pokemon battling skills, and also showcase you had basic leadership qualities as well, because being a lieutenant wasn't simply just following orders. It's also being able to train, and also be able to delegate, and also be able to relay information as well. But then, once you became a lieutenant, then you were provided with Pokemon that were level 20, and you would have the strength of a modern second tier gym leader. If you use Kalos as a base, you can see we've got Grant here, and you would be quite a solid member of the team with a level 20 plus Pokemon. And last but not least, we've got the final rank of the episode, and that is the rank of captain. All right, the rank of captain holds 3 stars on your left side, and the rank of captain, we've seen it in the first chapter and the second chapter of the Legends of Kalos, and they were held by Captain Patrice and Captain Petit, who both unfortunately didn't showcase any battle skills, but regardless, there is a level to becoming a captain that we still need to talk about. Right, so captains who are not on active duty are normally in charge of the training barracks. There's rarely anybody higher than a captain in the training barracks for the lieutenants, the second lieutenants, and the foot soldiers. Right, so my brain went blank there. Yeah, so they were heavily involved with running the battalions by taking charge of all the lookouts, the chefs, the medical staff, and the artillery staff. That was their role when they were on active duty, right? So lookouts, chefs, medical staff, artillery staff, anything to do with the running of the entirety of the battalion would be taken care of by the captains. The captains also had the opportunity to sit in and have strategy meetings. However, if there was a knight involved, they weren't permitted to speak. If there was no knight involved, they were able to say their piece. That's a very, very high honor to be able to sit in with somebody who was so far high above you in rank. You could be there, you could see what was going on, you could have an understanding of what was going on. And then obviously the higher ranks above them will give them the direct orders. But yet the captain's job will be to actively direct the lieutenants, and the lieutenants will go on with their job, so far, so forth. There wasn't a lot of difference in strength between a lieutenant and a captain, but one thing that was important was that you must have at least 50 active kills to be promoted to a captain. So you must be seen and recorded to have killed 50 enemies before you could be seen as a captain. And this is why the role of captain was highly respected, because it's shown that even though you've been able to possibly get your Pokemon higher in rank, it doesn't mean that you're actually effective on the battlefield. However, showcasing that you've had over 50 kills definitely lets everybody know that you are effective in battle. 50 kills isn't a small feat. Well, compared to the higher ups, when we get into it in a later video, you might think of it as a small feat. But yeah, 50 kills, and then you'll be seen, then you can obviously put in your application to be a captain. So if you do want to become a captain as well, both Pokemon that you get, both of them now must be ranked level 25, right? At least. And then you obviously can get the chance and the opportunity to get more Pokemon from the rental as a captain as well. And as you can see on the screen, the choices are a little bit better, maybe not much better, but a little bit better, a little bit sturdier. And then you can really go on and create the strategy you want to being the best captain you can be. Right, so we're going to leave the video there. There's actually so much more I want to do and so much more I want to say, but I think this is a great start. I don't want to overload you with information. So we've spoken about the 4 first ranks to get into the army. Well, it isn't easy as you may think it is. We play the games, we see the show, and we think, oh yeah, growing up these ranks are easy. But this is real life, and people's lives are on the line every single battle. So even just getting to 4th rank was a very high showcase of respect given to you by ordinary people, because this wasn't things that anybody could do. Because getting to a captain, the majority of no peasant ever became that high, and most low rank never really got higher than lieutenant. So this was something that was common between middle class folk. They would normally get to the rank of captain, but even then it wasn't easy. It's not something you could pay your way into being. You had to physically showcase your skill and your level, get your Pokemon to level 25, and then that's it. 50 kills on top of that. Not easy. Not easy at all. But if you have any questions, leave them down below, and have a great day, and be prepared in the future for another lesson.